Everyone, and welcome back. Hope you guys have had a great weekend. Hope you're ready to start another week, and hope you're excited for this week. We get to have class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is a full week, so I hope that you guys are looking forward to it. I just want to let you all know that we are having a test on, let me tell you, on Tuesday of next week, just so you all know. So a week from tomorrow. Um, that is May 12th, on May 12th. So we're going to finish chapter 23. We'll have a test over 22 and 23. And we're about to finish the chapter on Wednesday. Then we're going to review on Friday. Then we'll take the test on Tuesday. So before we end, we really just ended last time with Reagan's presidency. We were talking a little bit about Reagan before. And now we're going to talk about his vice president, Bush. Now, Bush really wins because he rides on the tail of Reagan. He kind of says, hey, listen, I'm going to be just like Reagan. I served with Reagan these 8 years, and I'm just going to continue on his legacy. Now, those are pretty big shoes to fill. Reagan's shoes that he left behind, not physical shoes. Okay, come on. The actual legacy Reagan left was really hard to match. And Bush is saying, listen, I'm just going to continue on from what Reagan had envisioned, and we will bring conservatism back. And he wins the election. The American people believe in him. They believe in his policies, and they elect him pretty easily. So he wins the election, and his first test really comes with China. And the communists are really getting aggressive, especially to those that are resisting communism. And there were a group of college kids that are seeing what's going on in the Soviet Union, which is crumbling, really, and they try and take matters into their own hands. So these college students meet at Tiananmen Square and protest against communism. And this is a famous video where you see this college student with these flags that's standing right in front of a tank. Because what happens is the communists send in the military, the tanks, the heavy firepower to stop this demonstration. And this young college student is standing in front of the tank, and that's kind of iconic, and that kind of shows the whole Tiananmen Square scenario where these college students are standing up against communism. It's kind of like chicken on the road. Do you know what chicken is in a car? Like two cars drive together, and chicken is the first one that dodges the other car, right? And if you both don't dodge each other, then you crash, which would not be very good. But it's kind of like this head to head, and who's going to be the first to fall or to waver, or in this case, who's going to have the most power. And the communists are going to show their power, and they are going to storm the demonstration. They're not going to care about the people that are demonstrating. The communists do not care about their own people. They really only care about themselves. So they begin crashing this demonstration. They begin shooting and capturing these college students, and it's really a sad time. Um, so China looks very bad in the American public, but then Bush does not necessarily treat China the way that a lot of the American people thought he should have. Reasoning is because China held the most favored nation status for the longest time. That is what the American trading system puts on a nation that is good trading. Like that's your status of trading, and you're the most favored nation. Well, Bush kept that favored nation even after what the communists had done. And many people thought that we should have put economic sanctions or we should have punished China economically by not trading with them, not giving them the supply of money because of what they did to these demonstrators that are just wanting freedom. And Bush does not revoke the status, so he continues to grant it. And this is kind of a bad mark on Bush that many people thought that he should have made it harder on China. Well, they are going to like what he does with South Africa. Um, there was a lot of social or racial tensions going on in South Africa toward the blacks. and there was a lot of segregation, very similar to what we saw in America, and we start supporting those that are against this apartheid. Apartheid is this segregation like we saw in America, and the the South American government, which is now led by Nelson Mandela at this time, starts to try and put an end to apartheid, to eliminate apartheid. This was the big push to end the segregation. Well, the American are going, Bush is going to support Nelson, and Nelson is pretty realistic. He's trying to come off as a nice um, socialist, but he will prove to be quite the opposite and really only have it in for himself. So he uh, he will drive out the apartheid that will be abolished, but then the U.S. media really praises him for being a hero. But then what he does after is pretty dictatorship um, rule, and he kind of turns bad from what he had said that he was. So that was kind of an interesting situation where it was good, but then at the same time turned out not so good with the way Mandela turned out. But one of the Bush's big accomplishments was the dissolving of the Soviet Union. We saw the end of the division of Berlin way back in 1989. That's right before Bush became president, right as Reagan was leaving. We saw the wall come down. That's in Berlin. That's the capital of Germany. And then in 90, about a month or about a year later, we see West and East Germany come together. Now it's Germany. It's no longer half and half. So you can see the Soviet Union is losing their power slowly and slowly. Well, it's because of these reformers. Here you had Gorbachev, who was bringing in perestroika, glasnost, opening Russia up. Well, now Yeltsin is going to be the same thing. This reformer trying to bring in these new ideas. And because of this, we officially see the fall of the Soviet Union because he leaves the Communist Party. He says, "I'm no longer a communist. I'm the president of Russia." Well, the communists are not going to like that, so they're going to try and form this military coup or this group to overthrow Yeltsin, which is not successful. So after this, many of the other countries see, okay, the Soviet Union is done. They can't even get control of their own country. So they leave the Soviet Union, they form their own league, which is they form their own league, and then they uh, break away and form independent countries. I'm sorry, I got distracted. But now the Soviet Union has officially collapsed, as we say. They're ceased to exist by the 90s. Well, there's still bad people in the world. In fact, Saddam Hussein is probably one of the worst in the world at this time in the 90s. And so much so that Bush compares him to Hitler, which is a pretty big comparison. Now, the reason why he compares him to Hitler is because he says, like Hitler, he was after innocent people to steal their wealth. So Bush and the American people are not in favor of Saddam Hussein. He's the leader of Iraq. And one, he's aggressive to his own people, but then he invades the neighboring country of Kuwait. Why Kuwait? Because of oil. It's all about oil and the money. So he invades Kuwait, really tries to show his power, and the U.S. is not going to let him get by with that. So the United States declares war on Iraq. Now, the reason why they declare war on Saddam Hussein is because he invaded another country. So we gather forces, and Bush does a really amazing job. He doesn't try and take it into his own hands. He says, listen, the people that can make the best decision are the military leaders. So he sets Colin Powell, best name ever, just saying. I don't know if I'm related to him or not. I'd have to go back and check. But anyway, Colin Powell, you can see him pictured on 378. Colin Powell was the leader at home in the United States. He never actually went over. He was commanding from the United States, and he was working very close with General Norman Schwarzkopf. This man is the next guy you see on 378, and you can see just by the picture how much the troops love him and how much he was able to connect with the troops. And with that, these troops are going to fight hard for him and do whatever he tells them to do. So he's commanding them from the front lines. Colin Powell is back in the United States, commanding them from home. And these are the two guys that are in charge of Operation Desert Storm. And look what happens whenever the military is in charge. It actually gets done super quick. In fact, it only lasted about 2.5 months. So Saddam Hussein, what a name. Saddam Hussein invades. United States comes in, and with allied forces, so France and England, help us, and we invade Kuwait to drive Saddam Hussein out, which in 2.5 months we do. Saddam Hussein will not be killed. He's actually going to run away to his bunker back in his home country. And the United States Bush decides, no, we're not going to chase after him. Because we did not come after him personally, we came after him invading Kuwait. All we're trying to do is liberate Kuwait. So once we do that in 2.5 months, then we're done. And this is, we say, the shortest war that America has ever fought. 2.5 months. Even shorter than the Spanish-American War, which was just a couple months. But Operation Desert Storm in 1991 is done. Now, just to give you a little hint, this was the decade that I was born in. I was not born in 1991. I was born just a few years later after 1991. My sister was born in 1991. So to say that my sister was alive, actually, no, she wasn't born in April. So this was a couple months before she was born. So to think that this was the year that my sister was born and this is when America was at war is hopefully giving you a timeline of how close this was. In fact, your parents would probably remember this Operation Desert Storm, that it was fairly recent. Now, that was a good thing that Bush did. He was able to drive Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. Now, we will later capture Saddam Hussein after the War on Terror. Whenever we go after Osama bin Laden and his group, we see Saddam Hussein still acting very dictatory, is that a word? Like a dictator. He's acting very aggressive. So we go after him and we will capture him and we will hang him. We will try him and we will hang him. But we're not focusing on him now. So Bush moves on and we're going to focus about what he does inside America because all we've talked about now is what he's done outside, the foreign affairs. But inside, it's not as good. One good positive thing that he did was he set up a conservative Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court justice that Reagan set up was Marshall. He was very conservative, but he's resigning. So now that's opening, and Bush has the job of putting someone else in his place, and he chooses a conservative person named Thomas. And so this was a great positive thing. He's holding up to his campaign promise of being just like Reagan. But one thing he doesn't be successful in, like Reagan was the economy. So one black mark, economically speaking, was, I'm sorry, this is a misspelling. This should be loan, saving and loan scandal, which caused the banks to fail. So this was very poor investments, very poor economic decisions to cause the banks to fail. The government had to bail them out. Billions of dollars were lost, which ultimately ended up in Bush raising the taxes. So Reagan lowered taxes. Bush ended up raising taxes because he was not able to take control of the economy like Reagan was. But it wasn't like it was a horrible depression that Bush caused, but that's what the media tried to push, especially around the time of re-election. So here's 4 years later, 93, he goes up for re-election, and he is not able to get reelected because of the media. A big portion of it was the media. Now, the United States was already kind of weary of Bush anyway because he wasn't able to hold up to Reagan. But now Clinton and the independent Perot were working with the media, and they really caused this scare, this kind of panic of our economy is in a crisis. It really wasn't, but they really try and push this to help their own campaigns, which we all know will result in a win for Clinton, as we'll see in our next section. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day and an awesome rest of your week. We'll see you next time.